Hello, my name is Andrea, and this is High Literature, a program where I introduce my friends, my comics and books and art and stories to you, my friend, the viewer. I am going to keep on trucking along with Life Drawing by Jaime Hernandez. We are at a pretty interesting part. So this graphic novel is 130 pages long. It's not that, thick. It's not this huge omnibus of a story. But it isn't until now, on page 31, that we encounter an OG character from Hopper's, Hopey. Hopey is at a local baseball field with her wife Sadaf and their son Manny, and Manny wants to play baseball. And what ensues is just a classic example of the more things change, the more they stay the same. And it's just so funny seeing how Hopey interacts with people as an adult, as a mother. Because we know Hopey as just this brash, loudmouth, ballsy, could care less what people think, just doesn't care. And she's still that same way, but it's definitely more reserved. So they get to the baseball field and they ask, hey, can our son join the game? And one of the players is like, no, you have to be 8, and Hopey's, trying to joke with him and calling him Muncie and stuff, and he's just not having. He's like, oh, my name's not Muncie. And instead of, just ripping him a new one like Hopey normally would, she just kind of, they walk off and she just kind of mutters to herself, like, okay, so I'll just call you Fuckhole McGee. And it's just funny, like, seeing this more subdued version of Hopey. And so they're hanging out at the park, and Sadaf asks about a call that they got in the middle of the night. What was that call in the middle of the night? Last night at 10:30? Yes, at 10:30 in the middle of the night. Hopey just being a shit. And Sadaf asks, was it Maggie? And Hopey says, I don't know, it stopped ringing before I could pick up. And then there's kind of like this beat. And Sadaf says, what's wrong? And then she turns to Hopey and she goes, Espy. And Hopey says with this perfect little shit-eating grin, I don't answer that, member. You gotta see this. Look at that. Look at that little smirk. I don't answer that, member. Oh, Hopey. And then she launches into this. That assumes something is wrong. And if there is nothing wrong, I still have to prove to you that nothing is wrong, when all along nothing was wrong, cookie chick. To which Sadaf replies, I'm done talking to you, which is pretty much the only thing you can say to a snarky response like that. But I mean, she has a point, but it's just delivered in that classic Hopey way. And so Hopey caves and she goes, it was Ray, okay? Or at least that's what the phone screen read. Maggie's boyfriend? Did he leave a message? No. Did you call him back? No. Has he ever called our house before? No. Should we be concerned? Because if I'm sure it's nothing, just leave it alone. You're the one who got upset when I asked, Espy. It had nothing to do with that cookie chick. I'm just an asshole. What's new? And Sadaf says, we'll leave it at that for now, and gets up and walks away. And Hopey calls after her, how about I just apologize and we leave it at that for good? Oh my God, Hopey, you're just. Mm. And then she starts wondering to herself, he would have left a message if it was anything, wouldn't he? Wouldn't he, Mag? Wouldn't he? Like, talking to herself, wondering, like, should I have called back? I don't know. And then it ends with the ball accidentally, like, rolling to their son, Manny. And his moms are like, oh, yeah, throw it back to them. And he tries and fails. And you ask yourself, how can you possibly throw like that and the ball rolls that way? But trust me, it's possible. I used to play softball and I loved playing, but I was a terrible, terrible, terrible player, and my teammates hated me because, I could not throw. I would practice, I would drill with my dad, and I couldn't throw. I could hit okay, and, I ran just fine, but boy, when it came to throwing that baseball, yeah, it was bad. And so he tries to throw the ball back, doesn't succeed. And it's interesting. First off, it cracks me up that it took, this long before we even got to a Locust character that we're all super familiar, who's been around since the beginning. And that it didn't really matter. Like, it wasn't, like, I don't want to say I didn't miss seeing any of the OG characters. It's just that Jaime writes in such a way that you get so caught up in the story of what's going on with the characters that he's writing about that you don't realize that characters that you're more familiar with aren't around until later, and then when they pop, you're like, oh my God, there they are. And it's also interesting to me how Hopey and Sadaf's son, clearly he's, this is I don't know, I mean, he's not a toddler, and he's not a teenager. He's a kid. I'd say he's probably like 6-7 years old. And it's just so funny to me because the last time I read anything about Hopey and Sadaf having kids, they were talking about, like, they were trying to find a sperm donor. And now suddenly here's this child. And I don't know where Manny came from. Did they adopt him? Did they find a donor? Did they have a surrogate? Did one of them birth him? I have no idea. And I don't know if it's because I've just missed a chunk of story somewhere, that, something got released and I just missed it and haven't read about all of that. Or is it because that's the way Jaime wrote it? And those details weren't ever shared. And I kind of hope it's the latter, because I feel like it's closer. I just like how it reflects real life, in the sense that, like, I don't know how many friends I have who, they had a kid, and this kid, well, they had a baby, and they're like, oh, new parents, and oh, you've got this newborn, and the next thing you know, this infant is a walking, talking, fully cognizant person, and it just happened so fast that you just completely missed, like, how did this all happen? But it happens whether you're observing it or not. And so I'd like to think that I didn't miss a chunk of story, because I do try to keep up with this particular line. And that it's just something that Jaime didn't really dig into, because sometimes you just don't catch everything that happens. You blink and the next thing you know, there's this whole other life here. And I think that it's also, it kind of goes hand in hand with just the whole nature of this book in general, how a lot of it is Pontus-centric. There's so, like, you're so, I've become so used to, reading this storyline, this series, and it's just always been so centered around Maggie and Hopey and Ray and Doyle and Izzy and just the whole Hoppers crew. And now it's become more about this youth. We've got a whole book that's about Tonta, and again, it's not, I don't want to say, oh, I don't miss the other character. I mean, I do, but I miss them because I love them and I've been reading about them for so long. But I don't feel like the introduction of these newer, younger characters is, it doesn't bother me. It's not something that I'm like offended or affronted by, like, oh, what's he doing? He's screwing up the story. I love it. I think it's great. And it kind of has this, I don't want to say like passing the torch down kind of feel, but just, just people, you grow up, you get older, and then this new generation comes along, and I really find it, I think he's handling that really well in these stories, with the way he blends these worlds of these Gen Xers with generation today, and the way they interact with each other and how their lives intersect in ways that are, well, you'll see. And another thing that I found really interesting about this particular segment of the story is the title. It's called Billy Be a Hero. And I didn't know what it was referencing. Was like, my initial thought was the story, like the Mudville poem, like Casey at bat, and like he was like this baseball hero, and here they are playing baseball, so I thought it was like a baseball reference. And I look it up, and it turns out it's a song called Billy Don't Be a Hero. And it came out in the 70s. It was by this UK pop band called Paper Lace, if I remember correctly. And it came out in 74, which apparently led a lot of people to think that this song was about the Vietnam War. But at the end of the day, it could be about any war, I guess. And in the song, it's about this woman who's engaged to this guy, Billy, and recruiters come through. And he signs up, he enlists. And all the while, the fiance is like, Billy, don't be a hero, don't be a hero, stay here, stay with me. And he leaves and goes to war and is killed in action. And the fiance gets a telegram talking about, Billy's heroic death and how she should be proud that, he was killed in action and da-da-da. And that she took the note and she threw it away. And this says, Billy, be a hero. And I can't help but like compare like the song saying, Billy, don't be a hero, don't go to war, stay with your fiance. And this is saying, Billy, be a hero. And then we see Sadaf and Hopey arguing about this strange call late at night from Ray. We don't know why he called. He didn't leave a message. Hopey didn't call him back. And as some of us know, Hopey and Ray have a they both, you know, they both have history with Maggie. They both love Maggie, and I don't want to say they compete with each other, but there's definitely emotional tension between them over Maggie. And then Hope's just wondering, like, God, should I have called back? And he would have left a message if it wasn't anything. If it was something, he would have left a message, right? And it's just an interesting title choice, and I wonder what was going through his mind when he did it. So yeah, that's it. It's a very short, quick little moment with our gal Hopey, aka Espy. I love how Sadaf calls her Espy because her last name was Esperanza. I just think it's such a cute nickname. And yeah, why did Ray call? And we kind of know why Maggie or why Hopey didn't call back. And I kind of have an idea of why Ray called. I think it has something to do with this. This is a very, very, very interesting edition of the Love and Rockets world. This book, it is the Hopper's crew going to a locals like punk reunion show, and God, like I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. It's nuts. Like recalling these characters when they were in their teens and early 20s, and now here they are, like complaining about arthritis, talking about their periods stopping and menopause, and it's just bonkers. Some of the characters showed up to the show with their own kids. It's just nuts. And like there's this one scene here where like Maggie like sees these like youngs at the show, and she tries to talk to them because she, you know, she feels like a rapport, like, oh yeah, I used to, you know, be you guys young at like a punk show, and so she sees them, and you know, it's two girls, and she's just like, oh, and they just don't want anything to do with her. Of course, I mean, can you imagine if it were the same situation where it was Maggie and Hopey and like people in their 40s like trying to come up and talk to them about, oh, I remember when I mean, they would just Hopey, they'd probably have been meaner to them than, you know, these kids are, just blowing her off. But it's a trip. So Maggie goes to this punk reunion show, and she's initially going with Hopey, and they get into this fight, of course. And meanwhile, Ray's at home, you know, just imagining all kinds of things and just hurting his own feelings. And I imagine that's what that late night call was. And he hung up because at the end of the day, I mean, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? He's with Maggie. Hopey's with Sadaf. They have a kid. I mean, you just, after a point, you got to move on. But it's easier said than done, right? Hurt feelings can hurt for a long time. God, it's so good. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up for now. And I will keep on keeping on. So thanks for hanging out, as always. And I will talk to you guys soon. All right.